The sun hung low over the quiet suburban neighborhood, casting long golden rays across the well-manicured lawns and identical houses lined neatly along the cul-de-sac. It was the kind of place where people waved at each other while collecting their mail, where kids rode bikes until dinner time, and where, at least on the surface, everything seemed peaceful. But as I pulled into my driveway that evening, I felt the tension that had been simmering beneath that perfect exterior for months. I stepped out of my SUV, immediately glancing at my front porch where my son, Daniel, sat in his specialized wheelchair. His oxygen tank rested securely on the side, the clear tube running beneath his small nose, delivering the life-sustaining air his lungs struggled to draw in on their own. Daniel, 10 years old with the sweetest heart and the most trusting eyes, waved at me excitedly, his grin wide and pure. "Hey, buddy," I called, my voice softening as I approached him. His caregiver, Ms. Linda, gave me a reassuring nod before heading to her car. She had stayed a bit later than usual, probably sensing the tension that had been growing around our home. But before I could reach the porch, I heard it, the sharp, clipped voice that had become all too familiar. "You can't just leave junk all over the front of your house," came the shrill accusation. I turned to see her, Karen, the head of the HOA, blonde hair in a tight bun, sunglasses perched on her head despite the waning daylight, arms crossed over her chest like a sentry guarding her warped sense of order. I forced a calm breath, reminding myself of all the reasons I shouldn't react the way I wanted to. Karen had been on my case since the day we moved in. Our ramp didn't match the aesthetic of the neighborhood, Daniel's medical van was unsightly, and don't even get me started on the time she complained about the American flag we flew on our porch. "It's not junk, Karen," I said, my voice steady but firm. "That's my son's oxygen tank. And he needs it." But Karen wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on the tank and the tubing, as if their mere presence offended her on a personal level. "It's a tripping hazard. It's against community regulations to have equipment strewn across public view like this. You people think you're special." My patience snapped. "We are not breaking any laws. And we certainly don't need your approval to keep my son alive." But Karen was already storming up the walkway, muttering about standards and rules. Before I could stop her, she reached down and yanked at the oxygen tube. Everything after that seemed to slow down. Daniel's smile faltered, confusion filling his wide eyes as the precious oxygen supply was suddenly cut off. He gasped, his small hands clawing at the disconnected tube, panic overtaking him. My heart lurched into my throat. I moved faster than I thought possible, shoving past Karen and grabbing the tube to reconnect it. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I barked, my hands trembling as I worked to steady Daniel's breathing. His face had gone pale, his chest heaving as the seconds ticked by. I finally secured the tube, adjusting the flow on the tank, watching as color slowly returned to his cheeks. Karen had the audacity to look indignant. "Don't you dare touch me like that. I'm just enforcing the rules. People like you always think you can do whatever you want." My blood boiled. I stood, squaring my shoulders, my height casting a shadow over her. And then I saw it, the group of neighbors gathering at the edge of their driveways, drawn by the commotion. Phones were out, eyes were wide, whispers spread like wildfire. I took a breath, willing myself to stay composed. "You know what, Karen?" I said, my voice low, steady, and dangerous. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." She rolled her eyes. "Oh please, what are you going to do? Call your lawyer. Cry to the HOA board." "You don't scare me." "No," I said, pulling out my wallet and flipping it open, revealing my ID. "But maybe the head of Homeland Security might." The blood drained from Karen's face. She blinked at the badge, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. The same woman who had spent months terrorizing my family over trivial neighborhood rules suddenly looked very small, very foolish, and very exposed. You're lying." "No, I'm not. And now, not only have you violated my son's rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you've committed assault on federal property. Because you see, my home, it's protected. Just like my family." The neighbors were no longer whispering. They were openly recording, some shaking their heads in disgust. Karen took a shaky step back, her confidence crumbling with each second. "Please," she stammered, her voice much softer now, "I didn't mean any harm. I didn't know. That's the problem, Karen. You never stop to think. You never stop to care. I crouched beside Daniel, brushing the hair from his forehead, my heart still racing as I watched his breathing steady. Now get off my property. And pray that I don't press charges. Because trust me, you won't like what happens next. Karen turned and fled, her head down, avoiding the judgmental stares of the very neighbors she'd tried so hard to impress. I stayed there, holding Daniel's hand, listening to the sound of his oxygen tank's reassuring hiss. The sun had set by now, the sky painted in streaks of pink and purple. The neighborhood, for the first time in a long while, felt quiet again. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And this time, I was done playing nice. The night air was cool, carrying with it a stillness that felt heavy after the storm that had passed through my front yard. I sat on the porch beside Daniel, my hand resting gently on his shoulder as he dozed lightly, exhausted from the ordeal. The steady hiss of the oxygen tank filled the silence, a reminder of how close we'd come to disaster because of one woman's arrogance. The glow of porch lights flickered on along the street, one by one, as neighbors retreated into their homes. I could still feel their eyes on me, could sense the weight of what they'd witnessed. Some of them I knew, some had children who played with Daniel at the park, others had always kept their distance, offering only tight-lipped smiles at the mailbox. But tonight, I'd seen their true faces. And maybe, just maybe, the illusion of this perfect little community had finally cracked wide open. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was Miguel, my deputy director at Homeland Security. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Boss," he said, his voice cautious. "Got a notification from the local precinct. Your address pinged. 911 call about a disturbance. Everything okay?" I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice even so I wouldn't worry him. "We're safe. But something happened tonight that crossed the line. I might need a formal report on this." Miguel didn't ask questions. He knew me well enough to trust my judgment. "Understood. I'll have a team on standby. Just say the word." "Thanks, Miguel." I hung up, sliding the phone back into my pocket as I stared out at the darkened street. I replayed the moment over and over in my mind. Karen's hand ripping at the tube, the fear in Daniel's eyes, the desperate scramble to reconnect the oxygen supply. My stomach twisted with the memory. This wasn't just another HOA squabble. This was endangerment. This was a crime. Movement at the end of the driveway drew my attention. A figure approached, hesitant, hands raised as if in surrender. It was Mr. Thompson from across the street. A retired Army colonel. He always kept his yard immaculate and his opinions mostly to himself. "Until now. I saw what happened," he said quietly, stopping at the edge of my lawn. His voice held a mixture of regret and solidarity. "That woman's gone too far." I nodded, appreciating his words but not sure what to say. "It could have been worse." He glanced at Daniel, his expression softening. "Your boy's strong. And so are you. If you need a witness statement, you've got mine. My wife recorded the whole thing." That caught me off guard, but I felt a spark of hope. "Thank you. I may take you up on that." "I hope you do. People like her don't stop until someone holds them accountable." With that, he gave me a respectful nod and headed back across the street. As the night deepened, I brought Daniel inside, settling him into bed. His breathing had eased, but I stayed by his side longer than usual, listening to the rhythmic sound of air flowing through the tube. His small hand gripped mine even in sleep, as if sensing my lingering worry. Downstairs, I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the kitchen window, staring out into the dark. My mind raced with options: file charges, escalate this through the legal channels, or take it straight to the HOA board and expose Karen's behavior for all to see. But a deeper part of me knew that this wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about standing up for Daniel, for families like ours who lived under constant scrutiny and judgment simply because we didn't fit someone's narrow view of normal. The next morning, the neighborhood felt different. The usual smiles and waves were replaced by curious glances and murmured greetings. Word had spread fast. Karen's SUV was conspicuously absent from her driveway. I suspected she was lying low, but I doubted it would last. By mid-morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a woman I recognized from the HOA board, Marlene, the treasurer. She looked uncomfortable, clutching a folder to her chest. "Good morning," she began, glancing past me as if expecting Karen to burst out at any moment. We heard about what happened. I wanted to say, I'm so sorry. And, if you want to file a formal complaint, we'll support it. Several board members have seen the video. I studied her, seeing the genuine concern beneath the nerves. Thank you, Marlene. I appreciate you coming by. We didn't know, she added quickly, as if trying to distance herself from Karen's actions. If we had, we would have stepped in sooner. I gave a small, tight smile. Now you do. She nodded, handed me the folder, and left, leaving me standing there with evidence, statements, and more support than I'd had the night before. I closed the door, my resolve hardening. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making a spectacle. It was about justice. For Daniel, for every family who'd ever been made to feel small because they didn't fit into a box. Karen had underestimated us, but she wouldn't get the chance to do it again.